University, who have participated in the ADT Talk Super Speaker Oratorical Championship. And this public speaking championship is a cornucopia of the competitions which are held here in the university premises. This event has a whole and sole purpose to hone the intrinsic and latent abilities and demonstrate the intrinsic values and abilities of diverse functions of the students. And friends, now is the time when we begin our program, for which I request each one of you to rise in your seats, fold your hands, or as per your religion, the way you follow. Close your eyes. And dear friends, it's very important to remember your most important God, the birth giver, who has brought you into this world, your own mother. And we begin this program with the World Peace Prayer, which doesn't talk about any caste, creed, or religion, but purely talks about world peace and entire humanity. I request.
जय जय स्वसंवेद्या आत्मरूपा देवातुति गणेषु सकलार्थमपि प्रकाशु वृत्तिदासु अवधारि बोधि गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Thank you. I request all to be kindly seated. And now, the moment has arrived, and we begin the ADT Talk 2018 Super Speaker Oratorical Championship, round number 2. And to judge this championship, thank you, Abbas, thank you very much. And to judge this competition, we have 2 of our own family members and 1 external judge. We have Dr. Atul Patil, Assistant Professor at COEP, Government College of Engineering, Pune. May we have a huge round of applause for our first judge, Dr. Atul Patil. We have our second judge, Professor Jovita Nathan, Assistant Professor at MIT SOER, School of Education and Research. A huge round of applause. And we have Professor Atif Sonke, Assistant Professor at MIT SOER. A huge round of applause for all the 3 judges. And now, without wasting a single moment, let us call upon our first contestant, our first participant, code number 62.
A marvelous morning to everyone present here. My code number is 62 and my subject code is 83. And today I'm going to be monologuing about the topic my life's philosophy. I'm no Socrates or Buddha or Confucius to tell you guys how your lives work. But I'm definitely a restless, emotionally exhausted teenager with this constant craving, this constant desire to know how life works or why things unfold the way they do. To know if something that happened 10 years ago will ever make sense. To know why I exist at all. Did you guys know that philosophy is actually a Greek word that directly translates to love for wisdom? Which means that since the beginning of humanity, we've always been looking for answers for why things happen the way they do. In simpler words, it's just what we can describe for us. It's just a theory or theories that help us or else that guide us for how we behave. We've all heard of Stephen Hawking, right? All of us, yeah?
Yes.
So I'm a strong believer of his works. So since my childhood, I never believed that there was a creator of the universe as we know it. And I don't think that in this world, what happens is being controlled by one person or one being. So in my childhood, I believed that everything that happened in my life was under my control. But I grew up, and apparently that's not how it works. Things do happen, and they do happen beyond your control. So for me, it was really, my faith was shaking continuously. Because every time I thought I believed something, there was something else contradicting it. Up until 2 years, I didn't have a belief system at all. And that is when I had a revelation. And the revelation was that without a strong belief system, we lose our sense of purpose. Like, why are we here? We lose the whole sense of it. I'm sorry. So now I'm going to actually be talking about something really personal. So I might get a little nervous. So on my second birthday, I remember my dad telling me this. My family told me that this happened. I didn't know. On the night of my second birthday, I was hospitalized because I met with an accident. And for the following days, I was in a coma. So I vividly remember my dad telling me this. For some reason, it's attached. It's emotionally. Can I just take a minute? So I vividly remember my dad telling me that I went through it. I sustained the injuries and the coma. I was a fighter. That's what I remember my dad telling me. And in fact, right before this, since I was the first speaker, I was so nervous. I just had a phone call with my dad, and he told me the exact same thing. In fact, we're all just some sort of fighters. Every day, today we're all fighting. We're fighting. We woke up today morning and we were fighting. We fought through the thing. So why? Why do we need this? Because we need to see some kind of progress towards perfection. So that is one of my second beliefs, that the whole point of life is so we can have progress, so we can give back to the world, to the society that's created us. To sum up,
This is the warning bell.
To sum up, I would like to say that initially a set of belief systems was laid out in front of me, and all I had to do was choose. But instead, I chose to make one of my own, which is just an amalgamation of all the belief systems that we know. So my life's philosophy is just the amalgamation of my experiences mixed with everything that I've seen. Thank you and have a marvelous day.
And now, contestant number 68.
So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So, my code number is 68 and my subject code is 100. my topic is capital punishment and death penalty. Is it necessary or barbaric? Raise your hands if you value your life. So basically, everyone values their life. Now tell me, what do you think is the value of your life in figure? Anyone?
Uncountable.
Uncountable? Infinity. Well, I say it's 10 rupees. Yes, I'm not even joking. It's 10 rupees. Exactly 1 year before, in the month of February, a guy killed his friend because the guy asked for 10 rupees just to buy his lunch. Yeah, it's 10 rupees. And that's not even the surprising part. The guy who killed his friend is now enjoying 30 years of jail and even getting paid for it. He's breaking stones in jail in the morning and getting paid 75 rupees a day. And is also being fed twice a day for free. Isn't it ironic? And that's not it. Some guy comes from outside in Mumbai a few years ago, kills a few hundred people, and what he gets is VIP treatment worth 25 crore and a lot of other services like chicken tandoori for his dinner every day. And it takes almost 4 years for the government to decide his punishment. I mean, why? Like 4 years for killing 100 people. Isn't it too much? I can say that torturing for a year to extract information is enough. But 4 years. Now let's talk about the favorite crime of the Indian criminals, rapes. Since 2012, the rate of increase in rapes has been from 30% to 267%. And the capital of our country is now about to become the rape capital of our country. And it's not a small issue. And what is our government doing? The current punishment for rapes in India is somewhere between 30 years to life imprisonment, but you get to live. And thanks to our constitution, which is also considered the one of the best constitution in the world, is so great that even after killing someone, even after destroying someone's life, you get to live. Isn't it amazing? I mean, if I was a criminal, India would be my favorite sports to carry out my experiments. So, the only solution that I see for all these problems is replacing democracy with dictatorship. Yes, India needs a dictator. A benevolent one, not like Hitler, but cruel enough to kill or to punish the criminal severely. Yes. Now, most of you must be thinking that what is this guy saying? Is he mad? Yes, I'm mad. If fighting for justice is madness, then yes, I'm mad. If fighting for the welfare of my people is madness, then yes, I'm mad. Tell me one person who has brought change in this world and was not mad. For their society, even Einstein was mad. For the society, even Newton was mad. Subhash Chandra Bose was mad. Adolf Hitler, yes, his methods were wrong. His targets were wrong. But whatever he did it for motherland. If this madness means going down in the pages of history as some lunatic people killing machine, it's fine. But at least this lunatic had the guts to bring some change in this world, which no sane person could ever do. Thank you.
Contestant number 67.
So good morning to one and all present here. My code is 67 and my topic code is 21. That is ability, needs and opportunity to be successful. So like, do you all know this phrase was basically quoted by the French leader Napoleon Bonaparte. So anything like before stating the meaning of this phrase or the quote, I'll first like to emphasize on the meaning of ability and the meaning of opportunity. So ability is something that you have within you or you have inside you. But opportunity is a moment which gives you a chance to show that ability to the society. So, for example, like in the film industry itself, like Mithun Da, Shah Rukh Khan, then many other fame actors have bagged the top position in their life because of this opportunity, because they got an opportunity to show their talent. Like even every single successful person has got an opportunity to show their talent to the world, that makes them stand off the crowd. So that's what important, that is what important in the life. So opportunities come. So like, has anyone ever been successful without getting an opportunity? Google it, you'll find error 404 not found. That is the most important thing we should keep in mind. So opportunities are necessary, either you make it or either you get it. So basically, like, even we all have the ability of public speaking. We can speak in front of the public. So MIT Talk has given us an opportunity to speak in public and show our talents to others. And similarly, like Persona Fest has also many events coming back and forth. So it also gives us an opportunity to show what talents we have got through various events. So this is basically what needs. And yesterday itself, like, opportunity is not only to show your ability, but it is also to improve your ability. So yesterday also, like, sir gave us a chance to speak about the topics which we are dealing with, like the trouble we are dealing with while speaking in front of the public. But later on, we got an opportunity to speak in public, to share our fears with the public. That's all. So I like to summarize, like, whatever opportunity we get is important, and if the right person gets grab that opportunity, can make a great change in the society. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And friends, our mentors, our guide, the pillars of MIT ADT University, they are here. So now is the time. Please welcome all of them. Please welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor of MIT ADT University, Dr. Sunil Rai. Registrar of MIT ADT University, Dr. Shiv Sharan Mari sir. Dean Humanities and Social Sciences, Dr. Asavari Bhave ma'am. HOD of School of Holistic Development, Professor Ravi Kiran Kulkarni sir. As per our tradition, lighting the lamp and inaugurating the program has been a part of our tradition. Following the same, we will now begin the lamp lighting ceremony at the hands of Honorable Vice Chancellor, MIT ADT University, Dr. Sunil Rai sir, Dr. Asavari Bhave ma'am, Professor Ravi Kiran Kulkarni sir, Dr. Shiv Sharan Mari, Professor Meghna Bogra and Professor Ashok Guge from School of Holistic Development. The lamp is lit and we are here to take the blessings from the Almighty for the best performances for which we are here. I also welcome all the heads of the constituent units and deans of institutes of MIT ADT University. We have Dr. Rajneesh Bedi ma'am from SOE. I request Bedi ma'am to kindly come on the dais. We also have India from School of Education and Research. We have Neil Varne sir, Head of Examination, and we have Dr. Padmakar Phad sir from Sports. Please welcome all of them with a huge round of applause. And now we would, as a token of our gratitude, we would like to felicitate all our dignitaries here on the dais. I request Professor Meghna Bumrah to kindly felicitate our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir. Thank you. I request again Professor Meghna Bumrah to felicitate our Registrar, Dr. Shiv Sharan Mari. I request Professor Ravikiran Kulkarni sir to kindly felicitate Dean Humanities and Social Science, Dr. Asawari Bhave ma'am. I request Professor Ravikiran Kulkarni sir once again to kindly felicitate Dean SOE, Dr. Rajesh Vedi ma'am. And I once again request Professor Ravikiran Kulkarni sir to felicitate Principal School of Fine Arts, Dr. Milind Dobre sir. I humbly request all the judges to kindly come on the dais. We have one external judge and two of our own family members. Dr. Atul Patil sir is here from COEP, Government College of Engineering, Pune. He is Assistant Professor of Communication Skills. I request Honorable Vice Chancellor sir to felicitate Dr. Atul Patil, Assistant Professor of Communication Skills at Government College of Engineering, Pune. Thank you, sir. I also call upon Neil Varne sir and Phad sir to kindly please join us on the dais. Round of applause for Neil Varne sir and Padmakar Phad sir. I request Dr. Shiv Sharan Mari sir to kindly felicitate our judge for today, Professor Jovita Nathan, Assistant Professor at MIT SOER, MIT School of Education and Research. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. I request Dean SOE, Dr. Rajneesh Vedi ma'am, to kindly felicitate our third judge for today, Professor Atif Sonke sir, Assistant Professor at MIT School of Education and Research. I request Professor Ravikiran Kulkarni sir to kindly felicitate Dr. Neil Varne sir, Head of Examination Department. Thank you, sir. And I again request Professor Ravi Kiran Kulkarni sir to kindly felicitate Padmakar Phut sir. He takes care of all the sports and health-related activities, because of whom we all are always fit and fine at MIT ADT University. Please, once again, have a huge round of applause for all our dignitaries on the days, off the days, all the judges and participants. And now I would request our Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir, a great guide, mentor, motivator. The adjectives are endless for him to address the gathering and motivate our participants for today's competition.
Respected dais, my colleagues, Dean SOE, Dean SOER, Registrar, Head of the Department of School of Holistic Development, Dean, Director School of Fine Arts, Director Sports and COE, and my other fellow colleagues in the auditorium. Very importantly, the judges for this breakthrough event that we are inaugurating today, and I will tell you why this heavy word of breakthrough of under the School of Holistic Development, the ADT Talks. Staff members of SHD, and very importantly, the participants of the first ever MIT ADT Talk. I welcome you to this initiative. I will just share a few thoughts. There was a lovely program going on. हम लोगों ने आके काम बिगाड़ दिया. बहुत अच्छा सब कुछ चल रहा था. मैं बाहर से सुन रहा था. But sometimes we, in these apex positions, are allowed to do what we do. So we are doing that. All right. Okay. Now I'll tell you that the whole purpose of this ADT talk. And before that, as you are all aware, School of Holistic Development is a unique initiative of this very, very unique university, MIT ADT University. Last year in the Vice Chancellor's Conference, when I presented this whole concept of what we do in SHD, I got a standing ovation from all the Vice Chancellors of 180 universities that were present there that day in Sarnath in Varanasi. And I am going to make a progress report presentation on the 17th of February, this time in Orissa, Bhubaneswar, again on how at MIT ADT University we embrace this whole concept of holistic development in a very systematic manner. And I'm sure that I will represent you well, and once again the higher education community will applaud the very unique efforts that we are taking. I have been also talking to a few of the corporate. This remark is more for my young friends. See, many times in life, at the right time, we are not able to understand the importance of right things. You know, so when parents tell you to get up early, you know, it's a very villainistic kind of a proposition. You know, we really don't want to do it. Only when you become senior in life and you become your parents yourself, and you also become successful corporate people, then you realize the importance of punctuality, the importance of good health, the importance of good behavior, without underplaying the importance of academics and professional knowledge. Let me tell you this, because I had been a reasonably successful engineer, a successful teacher, and a successful corporate leader. I keep asking this question to myself as to, between the two, that is my professional abilities which God blessed me, and of course my teachers and my colleagues helped me to earn those. Was it that, or was it my ability to be a holistic personality which has been catalyst, in many times prime mover, in attaining all those achievements, whatever I could? I always get the answer, it was the second one. So whenever I could possibly be, whatever I can say, claim to fame, whichever I could do few things in my life, it's because of the person Sunil Rai more than the professional Sunil Rai. So I'm not underplaying. So ये बोला आज से तो इसका मतलब ये नहीं क्लास में अपना attention छोड़ो, because sir said personality is important, profession is not important. That's not true. If you're not a professional, you cannot be a strong person. So professional, of course, is the basics. So this School of Holistic Development, what we do, we are also, this is ahead of time, I have to, of course, we have a procedure here in the MIT ADT University, you must understand. We debate it first in the faculty, put up a proposition. Whosoever is leading that proposition, in this case it's me, about some holistic grading system. I will make a presentation to my deans on the 1st of the February with their advice and corrections. I'll make a presentation to a subcommittee of the Academic Council, and once they clear it, we will make it to the Board of Management and the Board of Governors. This is how we do things in MIT ADT University. At this time, the proposition is that we will actually talk of a holistic grade and not just an academic grade for our students. I have audited this thought, so to speak, with almost about 10 leading corporate houses in the country, Tata's group, the Birla's group. I have some very close friends in both these great organizations, as well as with the Thappers and L&T group, certain others. In fact, they have all said that first they would like to look at the developmental grades of students, and then they will sort the performance of those students who they have shortlisted in the descending order of their academic performance. Do you get it? The importance? Because the companies have realized that if nation has to stand neck to neck with the West in terms of innovation and leading them the West with our Indian value system, then we have to be very strong in this holistic personality. Because if there are two people and a difference has to be made, it is said in strategy, if you can't beat the competition, change the rule of the game. And that's why Mahendra Singh Dhoni came up with the helicopter shot. He said, I cannot put a square cut or a straight drive like Saurabh Ganguly or Sachin Tendulkar or Sunil Gavaskar, the greats, or Mark Waugh for that matter. So he said, if I cannot beat them on the game, let me change the rule of the game. And he discovered a helicopter shot, and the rest is all history. Same thing, Virender Singh Sehwag. He said, actually he was not meant to play as an opener. He was meant for a number 6 position. Because opener there was nobody, he got an opportunity to go there. And then he did not have a conventional game of an opener. He had a conventional game of a number 6 which keeps on hitting, is supposed to slam and not supposed to see. So normally people used to say, this I was hearing in the interview of Lakshman the other day, this, please understand the sense behind this. So normally for openers it is said, 1 घंटा आप कैसे तो भी खेलो, धीरे धीरे उसको बॉल को जो है आप प्ले कर करके उसको ओल्ड करो. You know, you make the ball old by defensive game so that 1 hour goes, then after that the ball will not swing and then batsmen to follow can do the trick. The normal strategy being followed in cricket for 150 years ever since the cricket was established. So Virender Sehwag did not agree with that. He said, मैं अपना रूल खुद बनाऊंगा. बॉल को रोक रोक के ओल्ड नहीं करना है, बॉल को मार मार के ओल्ड करना है. I will make the ball old by hitting it, because that's the game I know. And then came the discovery of, people used to call the uppercut. He being a Jat from Delhi, he used to say uppercut. You know, for him upper and upper, but the things similar same. And there came the uppercut of Sehwag. So if you have to compete in today's world, you have to find your own identity. So if my faculty colleagues, when they go and showcase our best asset of this university, which is the best asset of this university is you all, right? It's the students are the asset of the university. Universities are made by students, not by the degrees the Vice Chancellor carries or my deans carry. So when these young students of ours, which are our asset, our representative, will be in the work life in the corporate world tomorrow, and they have to compete with IITs, NITs, graduates and others. Unfortunately, the world here goes by who you are rather than what you are. You understand? That's why Rahul Gandhi also can contend for Prime Ministerial candidate, because his surname is Gandhi. Who you are rather than what you are. Now, for what you are, people have to work hard like Modi did. I don't support anybody, by the way, neither Modi nor Rahul. Because we are teachers, we support only the cause of society development. The point what is being made is that we have to find a differentiation of our own. We are going to stick our neck out and tell, आप एक हमारा बच्चा ट्राई करिए अपनी कंपनी में और एक NIIT या IIT, I myself an IITian, right? आप दोनों को ट्राई करिए. The difference that you will find in a MIT student will be the strength of value system. They will not lose heart. They will not do wrong things. They will not get lured by money. They will only be working hard for the betterment of your company. और ये difference आपको 5 साल में नहीं पता लगता है, पैसा वापस टाइप्स, you know. So this is what is the value of School of Holistic Development, which you must please realize. So I would compliment my team from School of Holistic Development, which have done a fantastic work for the first year. We are learning. We are also learning how to put together this program. Please check it, Google it, find it. Anywhere in the world do you find for 2,000 students, you do a communication program or a health program. किसी को मिल जाएगा तो मेरे को आके backstage मिल लेना. First time my team has tried something which is for 2,000 students doing a communication and a health program. So we are finding that this has to be actually made showcased, and ADT Talks is one such initiative in that direction, wherein all of you are getting a chance to express yourself. Expression is not English. Expression is that inner confidence, which can come out when Modi doesn't speak good English. Our father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, also was not a very good speaker, but he could move the whole world because he had a very strong conviction. That inner strength outshadows any other quality that anybody can have. And that's why everybody heard Gandhi. He was not a very good orator like Nehru or somebody else. But if Gandhi said one thing, the whole world would listen. This is what is expression, because he knew how to express. ADT Talks actually takes you above the whole idea of just speaking good English or communication. It makes you express, right? So all of you, please take part. Never be shy of anything. Your thoughts are the best. Your presentation is the best because you are the best. Wish you all the very best for this first ever event.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. As always, you have been a great motivator and supporter for all of us. And we would be really grateful to all the patrons. We would be really grateful to all our mentors, our guide, if they could spare some more time while our students are participating and when they are competing here.
Sure.
I request the technical team to kindly adjust the mic system. Participant code number 63, please be ready. Participant code number 63, please be ready.
My code is 63. I'll be talking on the topic 36. The name of the topic is "The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence." So let's start with the question. Is the grass greener on the other side of the fence? What do you guys think? Yes or no?
No.
It is always greener on the other side of the fence. That is not the fault of the grass. It's not the fault of your neighbor. It's your fault. It's the fault of your perspective. Suppose there is a person who is at 10% success level. Everybody has a rock bottom. It might be you've fallen to rock bottom or you start from a base. There is always a base. If you're at 10% and there is another person who's at 40%. The 40% rises to 70%. You rise from 10% to 60%. Your success rate is 50%. That success rate is 30%. But still, all you can think about is how much hard I worked and I can still not reach that 70%. In the human body, we've always been taught, being humans, we have to compete. It was result week in SOE a couple of days back. Everyone who scored 9 pointers, all they could think about was, I got 9.2. Why did my friend get 9.5? 9 pointer you got, guys. Are you? For me, if I got a 9 pointer, it's really nice. I have friends sitting right here who I can cite examples of, which I choose not to. So, there are 3 things which comprise that quote. One is reality. Whatever seems real to you right now may not be the reality. A person who you think is really happy all the time may be dying inside. A person who's suffering from cancer, you might feel pity for that person, but that person is more alive than you are. There is satisfaction. So there is this spark which is there in each and every one of us. That spark makes the difference. I might have more of it, you might have less of it. Being from School of Engineering, the worst nightmare came true when my parents put me into engineering, honestly speaking. I had clearly told them, no matter what happens, I will not be an engineer. I want to get into something artistic, it doesn't suit me. I kept cribbing for the first year, but when I actually saw that I can do something which I dreaded the most, all of this time, I went into so many streams. I'm heading the university magazine. I'm heading all the interviews, all the events that happened around us. So I was given an opportunity and I was made to come out of my comfort zone. That word, the comfort zone which is there, you need to come out of it to face the entire world. Perspective, satisfaction, this is all we're about. This is what defines us. Me thinking engineering is bad can also lead to me thinking that engineering is the best thing that's happened to me. Anything can happen. 4 years from now, I want to be a happy person. Maybe money gives me happiness. I can say that I want to be so successful that I can buy anything. But that's because I'm a pessimistic person. For me, emotions don't matter that much. Money does. You can buy a lot of things from money. But that's just my opinion, right? Perspective. So with me, it will always be for a couple of things that I am here and this person who was given more opportunity than me is doing better than me. But I don't think so. Everybody is given the same opportunity. The other person is not special compared to me, right? I can do anything I want. It's all there in my hands. It's all up to me. I can be a stand-up comedian the other day and leave all of this. I have interests in photography. I can do anything I want, it's all inside me. As Swami Vivekananda said, all the power is within you. You can do everything and anything you want. You just need to believe in that. Thank you.
I request code number 35 to please be ready. And I request code number 63 to kindly pick up a few more chits for the next. Yeah, you can pick up 3 more chits. So we have 71, we have 64, and we have 73.
Good morning, everyone. My code number is 35, and I'm going to be speaking on topic 78, which pertains to women's entry in the Sabrimala temple. So, culture and menstruation haven't always gotten along well in our country. This was taken to a whole new level in a place called Sabrimala, which legally prohibited the entry of women aged 10 to 50 into the temple in 1991. It is only recently, in 2018 September, that this ban was overturned by the Supreme Court and women were allowed entry. And this caused a lot of religious uproar. I'm going to be giving my views on it. Now, lots of men, and ironically women, give arguments to support as to why women should not be allowed inside the temple. And this is bizarre to me because they argue saying things like there are lots of other places where men are not allowed, so this is apparently not a case of sexism at all. To me, it's like saying black people are not allowed here in my institution, but I am not racist. There are plenty of other places out there where white people are not allowed, but this is not racism. Let us all, respect each other's racial sentiments. What is even more outrageous is that you cannot use sexism as a cover to defend your sexism. We have to understand that it is outrageous to take cover under religion to support misogyny, which takes me back to the original question of why is there discrimination associated with menstruating women in our country. Now, as a woman, I think that these men and women who support segregation of menstruating women, they are really confused, and I'll tell you why. Did you know that 26% of divorce cases in our country are due to infertility issues, which are often associated with menstrual problems? So as a woman, you are telling me that if I cannot menstruate to give you an heir, then you're not too happy about it. But if I do, you're going to make me feel miserable about it anyway. We need to understand that by doing this, we are not only defying women their fundamental right to freedom of religion, but we are also legally violating the right to equality under Article 14, right to abolition of untouchability under Article 17, and discriminatory provisions under Article 15 of our Constitution. It is very important to consider the long-term factors also. What is funny to me is that the only time we speak about menstruation in our country is to speak about how a certain group of people are disgusted about it. If a conversation is to be had, I'd rather talk about important things like menstrual hygiene or create awareness about it. So, denying women their right into the temple is as bizarre as promoting any other racist or communist claim. One can have a lot of claims. One can say that different religions have different customs. We had sati in our country. We don't argue that let us continue to allow women to die with their husbands because it is customary to do so. We had child marriage in our country, yet we don't argue to marry off our children without giving them a right to education just because it would hurt some sentiments. Change is the key to growth and development. We need to understand that. We need to adapt our customs in such a way that they are viable with the contemporary world. Because if we don't change what oppresses us today, the day is not far that it will change us. Thank you so much.
I request contestant number 1 for her next speech. Participant code number 1. Please give her a huge round of applause.
So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Sorry?
Good morning.
Yeah, so my contestant code number is 1 and my topic number is 36. Oh, this was the hardest one to remember. Sorry, just bad with numbers. So yeah, my topic is grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. Yeah? Greener. Compare. That is where the problem lies. We always keep comparing our lives from others. If she is doing better than me, I am a failure. If I am doing better than her, no matter what it is, then I am a success. But I'm really sorry to say that if seeing somebody fail is your success, it's not success according to me, it's sickness according to me. Always comparing yourself from others for no reason. Seeing how successful they are, what they are doing, how they are doing it. Always. Okay guys, I'll like to tell you that there was a survey done in US by a nurse of the top 5 regrets which people had on their deathbeds. And you know which regret does top the list? The regret was, I wish I would have lived my life being true to me rather than, being true to the expectations of others and living it according to others. That was the topmost regret of 90% of the people. Okay, I'd like to tell you a story. There was a child. He was never aware that how to ride a bicycle. Okay, but then too, just for his joy and his happiness, his dad used to put that cycle on a double stand and ask him to just pedal for his joy. And he used to enjoy that. Till the day he saw his neighbor riding that bicycle. Now he wanted to ride that bicycle. He forced the bicycle and the bicycle started going on. The forward and forward it moved. His fear turned into a threat, then into the life threat, then to the death threat. And that is what my point is. When you ride the life of your bicycle, the bicycle of your life according to other people, it's always going to be dangerous because it's on the other people's terms. When it's on your own terms, no matter how many ups and downs you see, and when it is according to you, the speedy it is, the more fun it becomes. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Now one thing. There's the second story. There was a German guy, okay? He joined a new office. He kept moving his work table from one place to another to another. He rolled in the entire office. He didn't find a nice place. Finally, he went to the men's restroom and settled his table there. He felt it nice and he started working there. The department's head got he was very furious that what is wrong with him. He went and had a word with him that why was he doing so. The guy said that I am doing this because men's restroom is the only place where I feel that people know that what they do. This is the only place that people know what they are doing in their life. So the people who you tend to follow, it may be on Instagram, it may be in real lives, it may be in your class, maybe anybody of your family even. They don't even know what they are doing themselves in their lives. Am I right?
Yes.
So I would just like to say in the end that start building up yourself, start growing yourself in any manner. The success may not be success according to other people, but that success gives you happiness, gives you contentment, and that is your small success which is going to make you happy in all the points of your life. And the cycle is going to be speedy and more fun. So rather than comparing your grass from the other side, start watering it. Thank you.
Thank you. So are we ready? So contestant number 14. 14, 1, 4.
Cinema, a word full of glamour. A word that automatically makes us say lights, camera, and action. Cinema, that is described as a wonderful combination of films, music, bands, etc. Quoting Srimati Jyoti, that's my mom, who believes that however horrible a movie is, watching it in a theater automatically makes it bearable. But something like cinema, which isn't even real, can that impact your life? Can it really impact someone's life so much? Good morning, respected judges, fellow contestants. My code is 1414 and the topic number is 51, which is impact of cinema on life. Well, let's consider Bollywood as an industry. All of us have to agree that however terrible some movies are, Bollywood has given us some gems. As soon as we speak about Bollywood, the first thing that clicks our mind is a dhasu masaledar film. Correct? Bollywood is something that automatically our mind connects to and starts reciting those iconic dialogues. Be it Gabbar saying, "Arey o Sambh, kitne aadmi the?" Or be it Munna Bhai saying, "Arey circuit, अपन को भी एक जादू की झप्पी देना." Be it Kajol saying, कुछ कुछ होता है राहुल, तुम नहीं समझोगे. और सलमान खान saying, एक बार जो मैंने कमिटमेंट कर दी तो मैं अपने आप की भी नहीं सुनता. That is what is Bollywood. All of us connect to Bollywood on some other level. But Bollywood cannot only be good lines, epic dialogues or something. It also includes the sad part of it, which is nepotism, or be it, people who've been there in the industry who are talented but not recognized at another level. It could be so many things. I won't state the obvious. Whenever it comes to Bollywood, everybody speaks about good dialogues, amazing dance numbers, amazing songs, etc., etc. I would speak on something which all of you all have seen but never noticed. Well, assuming that all of you all have watched the movie Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, the first half of the movie is basic. I'm a huge fan of Shah Rukh Khan, okay, no judgments. So, the first half of the movie is basically Shah Rukh Khan acting like a complete creep, lying down in Kajol's lap in a train, touching her back while singing Rukh Ja, Oh Dil Diwane, or anything, all of that. But then in the movie, it's funny because it's happening between Shah Rukh and Kajol. So ladies, is it tolerable when something like that happens to you in real life? Would you tolerate something like that? I don't think so. So that is what is the difference. Why just consider DDLJ? Consider any 80s or 90s movies. The common way a hero got his heroine is by roaming around her, passing comments, holding her hand in public, etc., etc., which was pretty cool. She obviously she did mind it in the beginning, but then she falls in love with the hero. How realistic could something be, Like, yeah, no, mujhe chhed raha hai. Oh, I'm in love with him. But then, yes, in real life, that's not how it works. It's okay when it comes to movies and stuff, but then I think somehow these movies are the reason why certain men behave in a certain way. That's the kind of impact that Bollywood has had on our lives. So, next time, when I'm traveling in a train, I don't expect a guy to come and, like whistle or something. And I'll be okay with it. I'll be like, yeah, let's go for a coffee. Wow, what a nice whistle. So, I know Bollywood has another impact. We all enjoy a masaledar movie. And when I ask you all after that nice Bollywood movie that, how's the Josh? The answer is, hi, sir. But then that's not how it works always. I'm sure not every Basanti has a Viru protecting her and saying that Basanti in kutto ke samne mat naachna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, participant number 14. That was participant number 14. And our next participant is number 90. Participant code number 90. 90. Participant code 9090.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Sir. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alok. I am from SOE, and my topic topic code is 70, and my code is 90. Okay. So my topic name is the glass half filled or glass half empty? So if I give you a glass and I tell you to pour up water in it till it's half, so if anyone has this positive attitude, what will he say? The glass is half filled. But if anyone has this negative attitude, what will he say? The glass is half empty. So that thought process, that thinking, that what actually matters. Okay. So I have two questions on it. The first question is, how do you measure your thinking? Okay. I'd like to give an example with a great personality, Dhirubhai Ambani. Okay. Dhirubhai Ambani was many years ago, he was a petrol server on a petrol pump. He had thought something, he had thought process that one day that petrol pump will be mine. Okay, and after some years, that petrol pump was his. But had he dreamed only that particular petrol pump? I don't think so. If he had dreamed only that particular petrol pump, he wouldn't be the richest person in India as well as the richest ranking in the world. Okay, so that is what he had thought. That is what his thinking process had made. Okay, now I'll move towards my second question, that how long efforts you take for your success, for your thinking. Okay, so again I'll give an example, but this time I'll not tell the name of that person. At the age of 24, that man had a fall in his business. He was a businessman as well as a politician, and he had his own factory. At the age of 24, he failed with his business. Okay. At the age of 28, again he failed, means his wife died at the age of 28. Okay. At the age of 34, again he fails. Again he fails with his political issues. Failure, great failure I can say, at the age of 34. Now at the age of 38, the business which he had was locked up, was closed, everything was down. The thing remained with him was his factory. And at the age of 45, that factory was burned out. So great failure, but he didn't left his, he chased up and he said that one word, I will. At the age of 48, again he failed with the chase of vice president in the country. 48, 49, 50, 51, 52. At the age of 52, he was elected as a president of United States of America. Abraham Lincoln, the president of United States of America, guys, this is a very big thing. Okay, so this matters what thinking you do. Okay, and why thinking? That why always fluctuates. Okay, now you, if I tell you that till night 8 o'clock, I need 1 lakh rupees, would you give me? Why will you give me? Why will I give you? but if I tell you, I'm an unknown person, I'm not talking over here. If I tell you that I have kidnapped your brother or your sister and now I need 1 lakh rupees, would you give me? So this time basically what happens, how doesn't matters. How doesn't matters. Why matters that why I have to give 20,000 rupees. So that is basically what thinking process, that glass, that you think above it or below it, that really matters. Thank you.
So that was contestant number 19. Contestant number 54 is here. I request contestant number 71 to be ready after 54. So contestant number.
Good morning, one and all. My contestant code is 54, and the topic on which I'm going to speak is topic number 63. Individual brilliance makes a difference. Millions of people saw apples falling off the trees for centuries. It was only after the brilliant thinking of Newton that they found out that it was because of gravity. I'll give you another example. Had anyone ever thought of how we could talk with someone who is miles away from us just by dialing a few numbers? No, it's really hard to believe. But yeah, it was only because of the brilliance of Alexander Graham Bell that this became a reality. There are thousands of such people who make a huge difference in their own lives as well as the lives of the others because of their thinking, their certain characteristics which make them very unique. Individual brilliance creates a lot of difference because of the technological advancements. Like many of the people created technology which could make our lives comfortable. For example, Alexander Graham Bell created telephone, and Edison gave us the electric light bulb. These things really helped us. It is only because of their brilliance that we could use such objects. Individual brilliance can create leaders who could motivate others and make them follow them, make others follow them. One such example is Mahatma Gandhi, who led thousands of people, millions of people to fight for freedom. individual brilliance also. It's through perseverance and determination which helps in individual brilliance. As you may know, Jadav Malai Payang single-handedly converted a barren wasteland into a 1,360-acre forest by planting thousands of trees and bamboo plants daily for 30 years. He is known as the Forest Man of India and has the forest named after him, which is now home to thousands of animals and birds such as Bengal tigers, rhinoceros, etc. Individual brilliance is also an inborn trait, as is seen in our legendary singer Lata Mangeshkar. It was said that she's God-gifted. She can grasp any vocal exercise just by listening to it once. Ladies and gentlemen, it is only through individual brilliance that we can inspire ourselves and we can get inspired from others to do well in life. I must give you one example. In today's world, individual brilliance is being replaced by process-oriented systems. These systems are robust, everlasting, and can be carved through according to our needs. But the problem is that these systems make us very vulnerable and make us dependable on it. So for this, I strongly believe that for this we could definitely make a change, and it is only because of these people who inspire us to make this happen. And at the end, I would just like to say that individual brilliance can be brought in ourselves as well. Only we need to get inspired from looking at the stories of these people, and we need to get ourselves in place and just be strong and face the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So the next contestant is number 10. Round of applause for number 10. Participant code number 10.
Good afternoon to everyone. I hope you're all doing good. So my code is 10, my participant code is 10, and I'll be speaking on topic number 83, that is my life's philosophy. I'm going to start off with a very unpopular opinion. I think optimism is overrated. Let me tell you why. Optimism only comes out of sheer terror. You try to be optimistic to avoid the fear. Honestly, it's just you being fearful of something. I would like to quote William Arthur Ward. He said, "The pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects the wind to change on its own, but the realist tries to adjust the sail." There's optimism, there's pessimism, and then there's being realistic. I believe in realism. I believe that you should look at the world just the way it is. And as blunt as this sounds, the world is not a fairy tale, and let's stop looking at it like it's one. That is what I believe. Secondly, I would like to say that instinct is underestimated. We underestimate our instincts so much. Again, fear. I would like to go back to 4th of April 2018 in Allianz Stadium at about 9:08 p.m. where there was this Champions League, Real Madrid versus Juventus. Yeah, he already knows what I'm going to talk about. So, Real Madrid was trying to put the hosts at bay, and they were leading by 1 goal. Suddenly, Dani Carvajal, he makes a cross, and Cristiano Ronaldo, he wanted to defend the ball, alright? But instead of that, he went ahead, and with his back okay, with his back to the goal, he just, so 1 minute he was in the air, he just jumped with his back facing the goal, and after 2 seconds the crowd is cheering, his coach is surprised, the goalkeeper is standing there not knowing what happened. He made a goal. And this was no ordinary goal, let me tell you. His foot touched the ball at 2.83 meters, which is close to 8 feet. That high. So, and because of that, everybody, even the people supporting Juventus, which was the opposing team, they stood up and applauded for him. There were people cheering. And this goal was nominated as the best goal of the season and the best goal of his career. And this doesn't end here. His goal was so good, Juventus decided, we want this man in our team. Why? Did he plan this goal? Did he? No. He was impulsive. Of course, it could have failed. He could have broken his body. Anything could have happened, but he did not think of any of that. He just went by his instinct and he made the goal. Otherwise, he would have been called a reckless man for not calculating, having the wrong judgments, taking the wrong risks. None of that mattered. He took the risk, he succeeded. To tell about my third philosophy, I would like to quote Coco Chanel. Coco Chanel, he's a French fashion designer. And my French is bad, but I just want to quote. Je ne regrette dans ma vie à l'exception de ce que je n'ai pas fait. Meaning, I do not regret anything in my life except for what I did not do. Let me give you a little instance. Personally, what I cannot do is think what came first, the chicken or the egg. I can't do that. I don't know. So what I can. I eat them both. On a serious note though, I think we should keep moving forward in life by doing things constantly. Because making mistakes is one thing, losing is one thing, but having regrets is quite another. And life is too short for regrets. So I would like to say that my one constant philosophy is that I would want to keep moving forward in life. And I would like to tell all of you to keep moving forward in life by having the bigger picture in your mind. And while you're at it, don't forget the small pixels that make it all. For in the dew of the little things, the heart finds its morning and is refreshed. Thank you.
Thank you. Contestant number 10. She was right on time, exact 5 minutes. So this is the first contestant who was here for exactly 5 minutes. So our next contestant is number 21. Is 21 here? Number 21. Huge round of applause for contestant number 21. Please maintain silence and decorum.
Good day, everybody. My topic number is 37 and I am 21. Yeah, so how many Marvel fans here? So there's a dialogue in Thor Ragnarok. Odin says, Asgard is not a place, it's the people. And the same thing can be said about India. Because I think that India is defined by the people. 130 crore populations. My topic is dreams that should not let India sleep. And our study actually shows that 60% of Indians believe that full night's sleep is not necessary for their work routine. Why is that? What is keeping us awake? Kalam once said that dreams are not the ones which you see while sleeping, the dreams are the ones which keep you awake. And there are some things that are keeping us awake. What are those goals? What do we want for our country? As a country, what is something you're trying to achieve? You want to go to the moon? ISRO is trying to do that. Our self-proclaimed intellectuals will say that they are global citizens. But you will be lying if you tell me that it doesn't let a sparkle in your heart when you read in the news that ISRO launched another satellite. That's the thing of pride for us. That's the thing of glory. But with dreams, we also have to conquer some nightmares. nightmares parents have each night when they're worrying about how safely will their daughters or their children get home. That is rape. The problem of rape is something that we are trying to solve for years and years to come, but still fighting it and still increasing. But maybe one day it will come. I'm being a little optimistic, maybe, but that shall come one day. I think that India as a nation is really young. We are a nation of young people and young workers, and I think we have the greatest workforce in the world. I think China, it's everything there is made in China. America is divided right now. Russia is trying to control the world. We can take the center stage right now. We are there. You should know this. And we are, as a youth, we are at the frontier of this. That is the most important. And this guy here, very monotonous fashion style, always wearing orange, he said once that arise, awake and sleep not until your goal is reached. And I think we should all follow that. And I think our government, I was quite happy with the performance of the recent government, because they were like, you want a clean India? Okay, we are doing it. You want Make in India? Okay, we are doing it. You want Digital India? Okay, we are doing it. You want the world's tallest statue? No, but we are still doing it. I think this country needs people like you, people like me. We are counting on each other. So remember that let's not, get tired of petty differences and social depression and all. We taught the world how to have great sex with Kama Sutra. We gave the world zero diya Bharat ne. But that it's not going to do in the 21st century. We need something new. We are facing new challenges, new frontiers coming up again and again and again. I read a quote once that said that whenever you increase the circumference of a spotlight, the circumference of the darkness also increases. And I think India as a new country is gonna lead the world into the 22nd century in the future. Always we are gonna be the golden sparrow we were once. So let's hope. I am counting on you. You count on me, and I think we can make the world a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was contestant number 21. So, do we have contestant number 58? Contestant number 58? Round of applause for contestant number 58. Judges ready? Contestant ready?
My contestant number is 58 and my topic is 24. Have you all wondered what's that beautiful rhythm within all of us? Lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. 2 words, simple beats, so soothing, so calm. Lub-dub, lub-dub. Where is this coming from? Where is this feeling coming from? Where is this sound coming from? It's from here. It's from the heart. Good day, everyone. I'm contestant number 58, here to talk on the topic 24, Music and Psychology. We've all listened to music all our lives. From the time we were in our mother's womb to the lullaby she sang to us to put us to sleep. How comforted, how loved, how warm did we feel? We all have a memory holding our friend's hand in nursery and singing aloud a nursery rhyme, or at least in front of your relatives. We've all gone to baby showers and heard babies cry. We've danced to songs in parties and weddings. And in some cultures, we've also gone for the morning where there was still music. Our body and mind recognizes sound and music instantly. And in fact, music provides us that split second of a space where there's no problems. You believe that there is no problem, there's nothing to worry you there. And in fact, music also gives you the motivation to walk that extra mile when you're tired, when you're giving up. It tells you to go ahead. Well, now I've told you that music can push you forward and we've got the existence and how it's there all around us. How is it helping us? How does it work with our psychology? If you listen to music, you should realize that it increases your memory, decreases depression. It also has physical characteristics and benefits on that. It lowers your heart pressure, decreases chronic pain. We put a beautiful institution in our country called the IMTA, Institute of Music Therapy Association, which had the conference in December. It gave us a chance for people all around the world to come talk about the music healing in our lives. Now I want you to know that every 4 people in a count of 15 have some mental illness. It could be depression, it could be a feeling of loneliness. And the thing that can solve this is music. What is the average size of a baby you've seen? Works? Last summer, I went to a hospital and I saw a baby 2 times or the size of a Coke can. Your Coke can is this much. Some of you or most of you might find this disturbing, but the baby was born in 22 weeks. It was an early form baby. The mother there was sitting and she was almost she's spent a lot of time crying. Dr. Shalini Somesh, a rehabilitation psychologist from Chennai, she was playing music. And at that point, I honestly didn't understand how it was soothing at all. The mother was in sorrow. The baby was, tiny. And I went after like 2 weeks. I visited the hospital till my summer vacation got over. The baby was getting better. It was out of the incubator. The baby was healthy and the mother was happy. That's the power of music. It's not only instrumental music, but the music that comes from here, the heartbeat, the lub dub. It's not dhadak dhadak dhadak. It's lub dub. Music has a power of connecting people. Now, if all of us sing together, it will create a connection. If everyone in the country, everyone in the world sings together, it would create a connection that the combined efforts of psychotherapists all around the world, that would fail. You know the song that we shall overcome, we shall overcome, we shall overcome someday. Hum honge kamyab? So I want you to realize that we're all blessed standing here. You can listen to the nature, you can listen to the drop falling on the floor. You can listen to the person breathing heavily. I want you to take a moment and feel that. I want you to feel what's happening here. I want you to take in that moment. Feel blessed that you can hear and you can feel something. It works with your psychology. You can heal people with the music. You can heal people with the sound. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was contestant number 58. Do we have number 31? Round of applause for contestant number 31.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a very wonderful day, and I'm actually wishing I could actually have gone for a traveling purpose. By the way, I'm serial number 31, and I'll be speaking on the topic of 56, which is how traveling can help us in getting new ideas and in experiential learning. So we all know that our mind is actually the source of a thought. But do you actually know that the mind is also the place we spend 90% of our living? And along with that, the humongous speed of our thought has made our mind the fastest traveler to have ever existed. When we on a daily basis, when we associate traveling, we associate it with traveling to places like oceans, mountains, and desert, etc. Or like in the past, like traveling to 7 seas or the Silk Route. But in the modern time, we are associating travel with outer space, moon, and Mars. But traveling, the topic has been going around for ages. But do you ever wonder why we travel? Like, does it strike you? Like, I wonder a lot. Like, why should I travel? When I think of it, I think that we travel to explore new places, new people, new culture. But I think there is more to that. We travel because we travel for ourselves. We want to explore our personalities. We want to travel to explore our skills and survival instincts. I mean, how many of you have ever gone for trekking expeditions? Can I see a show? Yeah, so you all have enjoyed these experiences, right? But why? why do we enjoy those? Like, I mean, I remember going on high altitude expeditions several occasions. I mean, I remember taking up challenges of riding bicycles down the hills or going for safaris. But is it really that important? I mean, is it really worth taking the pain and discomfort? Yes, it is very important and very much indeed important, I would say. As I witnessed when I was traveling back from Ladakh and had the opportunity of meeting an 80-year-old man. I mean, I couldn't imagine people traveling beyond 50, 56. But an 80-year-old German man and a young daughter, they both were traveling alone and they had plans to travel different parts of India. So when they were traveling, that made me realize that we could be traveling different parts, but the purpose remains the same, to explore ourselves. And like for the gentleman, he was traveling to feel young at heart again. And the young girl who was traveling because her father had told her, if you are becoming a medical practitioner, you need to understand the human tribulation, which is you need to understand the concept of human life and death. So she was traveling to understand how people connect with each other, how people live. And during these journeys, they were exploring all they could. And on several journeys that I have done, and mentioning one of them that I did, so I was traveling from Kerala to Delhi by road, and which was a very fantastic trip, by the way. And I was able to witness the diversity we have in India, and the diversity that we all should actually explore and enjoy, I would suggest. So while traveling, I was able to witness the different diversity. While, like, if you see the air in the Rajasthan, it actually sculpts the sand dunes. The air, the water in the beaches of Goa helps in sculpting and shaping the beaches. And the breeze and the snow helps in shaping the mountains. And the beautiful, bountiful nature actually helps in development of the Western Ghats. So while traveling and moving around, it made me realize that perhaps all these natural elements are actually there to generate a beautiful contours of life. And perhaps that is why a seed of inspiration was sown inside me that made me a designer that I am today. And that helped me to actually sculpt, using the nature inspiration, sculpt the natural heart of a human. And that is what I actually want to promote and help you guys to actually go out and explore and travel. It will really help you create new ideation processes and help you enjoy your life to the fullest. Thank you.
There was contestant number 31. Do we have contestant number 13? 1, 3, 13? Round of applause for contestant number 13. Audience ready? Yes. Judges ready?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today I will be speaking on the topic dreams which should not let India sleep. Number 37. The seeds of these dreams were laid by our founding fathers, the nationalists, the freedom strugglers, the freedom fighters. They laid these dreams. They dreamt that independent India will be free and will be governed by her own people. And that dream did not allow them to sleep. The preamble of a constitution gives us a glimpse of the dreams of India. One such dream was to keep India healthy. 196 million people in India are undernourished, a staggering 15% of the entire population. 15. Whichever you like, slice it or dice it, this shameful truth is inescapable. More Indians go to sleep hungry than anywhere else in the world. 35 million children aged between 15 and 14 do not attend school. 1.7 million people in India do not have a shelter to protect them from heat waves and blizzards, a common sight in Delhi. What are we to say? We, the privileged, can we sleep to such issues happening in our country? Yes, such issues every day. And then, I still don't remember what I was supposed to say.
It's gonna work out.
Thank you, sir. Okay, where was I? Oh, okay. Dreams that do not let India sleep. We should dream dreams that help India sleep better at night. Homeless people asleep in fear of being robbed. The farmers, being the economic backbone and the employing backbone of this country, are ignored, and policies that only benefit the rich and money that goes into scams. We are supposed to take action against this. Certainly, my friends, Can we sleep blissfully at night, being totally unaware of the things of the plight of our fellow Indian citizens? No, we cannot. But in all optimism, before this, homelessness, exploitation, and hunger all paints a very similar picture to the crisis happening in Venezuela. Do we really want that to happen in India? Should we let this go on? I have a dream. Adapting the famous speech of Martin Luther King Jr., I have a dream that all the states sweltering in the oppression, in the heat of oppression, and the states sweltering in the heat of racism should will transform into the oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that all Indians will be treated equally in our country. Let's conclude my speech. Thank you.
So our next contestant is number 70, and we may still have a huge round of applause for number 13 because, as we all know, that it's not simple to be here on stage and even to utter words for even 5 minutes, right? So please cheer him up, number 13. And before we get to number 70, contestant number 70, judges, the next contestant is contestant number 70. So I was saying, before we move on to contestant number 70, I just would like to, I want all of you to, motivate yourself, all of you, everyone who is sitting beside you. And I also would like to say that we have such a wonderful audience here that they know what to do with whom. Yes? So can we please have a huge round of applause for your own self? It's a beautiful team spirit. It's a beautiful competitive spirit which has been observed, which has been seen here for MIT ADT. It's a great day, to observe this. Thank you. And back to 70, please.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. I'm so sorry. Respected dais, my dear friends. I'm code number 70, and the code for my topic is 54. Okay. My topic is A Thing of Beauty is a Joy Forever. Well, we all know that this is from a famous poem created by John Keats. But anyone wondered that why this is given to us as one of the options to speak here today? Well, we all are so damn busy in our lives that we have almost forgot to see in our surroundings and be happy about it. For me to be happy, things need to be according to me. For me to be happy, you need to be according to me. Otherwise, I cannot be happy. Happiness and sadness is nothing. It's all there in the mind. Things of beauty are different for different people. For me, my books, my family, my relatives, my friends, etc. For someone, it can be traveling. For someone, it can be their shoes. Anything, like literally anything. Things of beauty are so special to us. They act as rain in the desert. And the best part, they are eternal. They make us happy. And do you know, happiness is the only thing for us need to vouch for. Do you agree with me? Yes. Thank you so much.
So we had contestant number 70. Do we have 81? Our next contestant. Number 81.
So my code is 81 and I'm speaking on topic number 98. World peace is obtainable. So like while coming on my bike, so I was thinking about this one thing. Like I think about it every second of my life. Like what if the aliens invade our planet? Like what will we do? Like in the War of the Worlds, Tom Cruise fought against them. I'll be the Tom Cruise. Don't worry guys. But in War of the Worlds, we noticed one thing. The world united. The world united as one, irrespective of the race, caste, religion, sex, anything, but they united as one nation for a mother planet. So, do we need war to unite our world? As one great man ever said that the closest we have ever got to world peace was World War II. You may ask the question why. It was the most tragic war ever happened on this planet. But leaving one country, the whole world actually united together to fight the criminal. World peace was a myth, is a myth, as many people say. Because from beginning of humanity, the humans have fought wars. For their food, for their stomach, for their family, for area, for rich, for becoming rich. For everything, we have fought war. Even the nomad, for the early age, the humans, they fought war against animals, against other humans to not starve to death. For kingdoms in medieval ages to today for power. So there was a big nation institute, international agency to keep peace in the world. It was called the League of Nations, which was formed after the World War I. But eventually it failed because World War II happened. The League of Nations actually didn't make sense because all the powerful nations were part of it and all the weak nations were not in it. Even Germany was excluded from League of Nations, which resulted in World War II. So United Nations was formed after World War II to bring the world into a peaceful place. But again, the Security Council included two major superpowers, the USSR and the USA. So we know what happened next, the Cold War. The world was not in a state of war, nor it was in a state of peace. It was a Cold War. So when in 1991, the USSR dissolved and formed Russia, people thought that now the world can be a better place, it can be peaceful, but no, in today's world, it is still not peaceful because US has spent $600 billion every year on its military budget. That's twice the GDP of Pakistan. Like literally, like you spend so much in a military budget that Pakistan can't afford you. So why are we spending so much money? Instead, if we give $600 billion to ISRO, we can actually make a human population on Mars, and we can actually make civilizations on Moon, Mars, or even beyond. $600 billion is like 600 times the ISRO budget. So if we actually make an international world democracy, we can reduce the military expenditure from $2 trillion worldwide to, I guess, to fight terrorism, $20 billion is more than enough. $2 trillion can help to stop starvation, terrorism, and what else? Like we can even reach Mars beyond everything with the $2 trillion. World peace, my friends, is not a myth. It's obtainable. It is to us. If we can achieve it immediately, if we think it's not possible, it will take time. It will take decades, centuries, or even a millennium, but it is possible. So I'll rest my speech with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I would like to call upon, I would like to withhold the contestant number 72 and 32. Instead, I would like to call 29. There is a. Can we please clap for 29? Actually, she is suffering from fever. She wanted to leave, but she said that I will at least first. So we have 29.
Please, mom, don't make me look so weak.
You are not weak, dear.
Yeah. So, good afternoon, everyone. My contestant code is 29, and my topic number is 75, which is education and the change that it needs. So, I'll start off with a very personal story. So, back in the day, when I was in 11th and 12th, and I had a subject called biology. And the person who taught the subject was a teacher called Miss Dhar. Now, Miss Dhar was a terrible person, right? And she had absolutely no sense of what was going on. She used to come in the classroom every day and, pick up an anatomy textbook and tell us, since you guys have already studied for NEET, so I'll just skip through. And she skipped, and she skipped, and she skipped through the entire biology textbook to the point that I thought that I'll flunk my boards. So, the point that I'm trying to raise over here is, not everyone is meant for teaching, which is a very important thing to understand. You can know your subject very well, but there's a big difference between knowing the subject very well and communicating the subject. And I think most teachers need to understand this in order to make the education system a bit more better. Young teenage minds are pretty impressionable, even at the age of 16 and 17, and they need to inculcate a logical thinking in order to get better grasp of concepts. I'll try to go ahead with. So I'm in my third year and I'm pursuing bioengineering. So never in my life that I thought that I'll put concepts of physics, chemistry, computers, electronics, robotics, all inculcated in biology. And most of the children will never understand it because our education system fails to apply knowledge in all across the domains. And this kind of thinking can be really restrictive for students who are trying to explore more options. And it's really bad for students who have an out-of-a-box thinking when they try to bring out with innovative answers to a question that has been taught day in and day out by teachers, and then they are just told, you're just a kid, you don't know anything. I think this kind of thinking needs to stop if we want to make the education system a bit more better. I'll conclude my speech by trying to tell our educators that we need to stop being so obsessed with grades and marks to judge a person's intellect. That's all.
So, just to clarify once again that you all will be judged only and only on the basis of your performance and not on the basis of any other comments or any compliments that we receive. And so just make sure that it is only on the basis of your performance that you are going to get judged, because we have all our 3 judges who are waiting for your performances to be better and better. All right, so we had contestant number 29 here, and we would like to call upon contestant number 72. Contestant number 72.
Ladies and gentlemen, I bear grave news. The results are out. We have been diagnosed with a case of being in constant flux. We're at the mercy of a higher power which decides that every time we do something, it won't happen the same way twice. Every step we take ahead, leaving behind all that we've done and into all that can happen, something changes. Even the most mystical soothsayer, if they exist, can't predict exactly what will happen. This is the reason. Topic number 59. Change is the only constant phenomenon. An old Greek philosopher said, change is the only constant, and then followed it up with some more philosophical stuff, like no man steps in the same river twice. I thought about this for some time, and then I came to the realization that scientifically also, this is quite true. You put your foot in a river and then take it out, and by the time your next foot is in, all the molecules you touched before have gone. The river's nature has changed. It is not the same river anymore. Let us consider the caterpillar. The caterpillar goes through a painful and, according to me, quite traumatic experience of undoing and then remaking itself into this beautiful butterfly. If we know that a change is going to occur sometime, somewhere, about something, why are we so afraid of it? Why are we stubborn and obstinate? Does the butterfly say, oh dang, what a dream. I've had to go through this painful process and now I've come up and become this thing that everyone admires and I can fly? No. Not all of us can become butterflies, but moths are just as great. Moths can fly too, guys, don't worry. What happens after this is that most of the people live their life on a short-term basis. They flit from day to day. Not all of us dream of tomorrow, but even fewer remember that there is the day after that, after that, after that, each of which have their own changes, which we can anticipate. We forget that life is a marathon, not a sprint. You can't outrun change. You have to anticipate it. You have to wait for it, and when it happens, use it to metamorphosize, like the caterpillar does. When a change occurs, you have to remember how to think about it. Not all changes are bad. Better or worse, it will happen. What we can do, and what the wisest are already doing, are anticipating, predicting, preventing maybe, but preparing most of all. Any change we face, you can be scared, that is fine, but face it head on, like a ship at sea and a large wave. Face it head on and full steam ahead, and no change will stop your path. I'd like to conclude with an adaptation of one of my favorite quotes from Star Trek. Change, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the everyday man. Its unending mission to give rise to new and strange implications and unique conclusions. to force a man to go boldly where he has never gone before. Thank you.
And now contestant number 15. So dear students, I would just like to tell you that this is the last performance before we break for lunch. And it is my humble request to all of you, even if you are done with your presentations, your speeches, if you could be here to support your fellow mates, that would be a great gesture. So we have judges, contestant number 15.
Good afternoon, one and all. I'm contestant number 15 and my topic is 35. Nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. You know, I'm sure that most of us present here would have heard about the story where a man walking on the street saw a man on a bicycle and wished if he had a bicycle. The same thought came into the mind of the man on the bicycle when he saw a man on a motorbike. The same thought process came in his mind when he saw a man in a car. And the cycle goes on and on. It's very important to understand two factors in our life: need and want. These are very two different words which make a very huge difference in our life. Need is something when we look around ourselves, we see we have it. We have everything that we need. But want comes out of desire, and desires have no end. And that is where we give birth to inferiority. Yes. I mean, what are basic needs? Food, shelter, family. Some of them doesn't even enjoy that. But what are desire? I'll give you a simple example. I'm in a group of people, okay? And there are few people dressed up in Armani, Gucci, Jimmy Choo. And then there's me, who is dressed in a dress of some local market, shoes which are not branded. So this constant thought comes into my mind instantly, that will people judge me for what I'm wearing? Will people think that, oh, what a terrible fashion sense do I have? Well, my friends, let me make it very clear to you. That particular moment, you are sending out vibes to your mind that you know you are inferior to the person in front of you. Yes, inferiority is all here. Nobody forces you to be inferior. It's you who believe that you are inferior. But the moment you are satisfied with what you have, contented and happy with your surrounding, I'm sure nobody and nothing in this world can make you feel inferior. And this reminds me of something, an incident in my childhood. You know, I was reading this book where we had antonyms with pictures. So there was a word called beautiful, and then there was a word called ugly. The beautiful word had a picture of a fair lady, and ugly had a picture of a lady with a dark skin. So it's common that when we look at a person, when we think of word beautiful, what comes in our head is fair, hourglass body, fit, fine. And that's how we define it, beautiful. But no, beautiful is not about looking fair, having skin-toned body. It's not about that. It's all here. Change this patriarchal thought and change this definition of beauty. Beauty is all within us. We carry ourselves the way we carry, the way we present, the confidence within us, the conviction is our beauty. That is how we are. This reminds me of the lines of a very famous poem by Angelina Angelo. She said, "Pretty women wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to a fashion model size. But when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. It's in the reach of my arms, the stride of my steps, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman phenomenally phenomenal women, that's me. Yes, that's the belief in you that makes you superior or inferior. Try to have faith in yourself and try to look at things differently. It's your perception that matters. You know, beauty is in the eye of the person that looks. And after all, that's what we have been taught. A rose will smell like a rose and not like some other flower. So your life is your life and you give out the fragrance the way you are. Nobody has the right to put you down or to put on or force on opinions of theirs. So learn to believe in yourself and learn to believe that yes, you are best in your own body, in your own skin tone. Thank you.
Thank you, contestant number 15. So, dear students, now we will break for lunch.